handed in your notice to instead do something that actually lights you up.
You've got to find the thing that actually is your thing. And I've just always felt like this sort of burning desire to try and find that. Put your mind to something that lights you up and energizes you and is just better for the people around you.
But I was like, whoa, I've never met a dude who's done an ultra.
It's all through the physical endeavor of pushing yourself no matter what. It's a love for the outdoors.
Imagine that was flipped on its head and everyone was living a life of purpose.
That feeling of desperation that you have right now, being lost, not knowing what the next move is, not knowing what your passion is, not knowing where to go, that feeling is necessary. Use that desperation to start doing crazy things. Sweet. You're lost. You have no idea what you're doing. Sweet. Everything is possible now. So you got to add these as well.
All right, let's dance. Dude, you've got an incredibly interesting mind. I will start by saying that. And beautiful way with words. I remember when we first had our first chat in the kitchen in the office, I was like, this guy's a good guy.
Yeah, I remember. No, it was, we were having lunch.
Lunch, yeah.
And then our friend Zoras turned to you and turned to me and said, Tommy, have you met Dean? And I was sort of like, yeah, no, we've kind of met. And Zoras was like, you and Dean will get on, you guys, yeah.
Yeah.
He said something like about deep thinking, or you just love to chat
Some
deep
shit. Yeah.
deep shit, yeah.
Right, let's get into it. You did something this week that most people would only ever dream of. You handed in your notice in the job that you had no passion for, to instead do something that actually lights you up. How did it feel like that morning when you woke up and you were like, I'm doing it today?
Yeah, that's a good question. You good at this?
Yeah.
How did it feel? I think the morning of, it felt very right. I've obviously been thinking about it for a while, but I sort of put it off for a fair amount of time because I've wanted, like, this time I quit this job to be like the ultimate time. So yeah, I was mostly just grateful. You know what? I was thinking I was being pretty grateful. I was feeling pretty grateful morning of, because like the job I've had for the last 2 years where we met has been the best job I've ever had. Like in terms of just the setup and the culture and the people and the product itself. Yeah, everything has felt like a bit of a gift for the last 2 years. So I didn't want to like run away from it too soon, ungratefully. So I think, but I ultimately felt like it was the right time. Like you and I have spoken about it for a while. I think the time I was thinking about doing it in January, you come into the new year, fresh start and all that sort of stuff. But I don't know, the more I think about it, the more a new year is just like an arbitrary moment. And actually the reality is like I want to be fully set up with what I'm doing like by the end of the year and running into the new year So it felt right,
Were you like, this is like the peak of, is this the start or maybe the end of my movie?
Yeah, no.
The end of one
the
start
end of the
another,
movie
right?
is actually starting the drama.
You know what, right?
Yeah, just new chapter. It's good, yeah.
I think let's go back a little bit and kind of frame this whole thing. So it'd be good to get an understanding of, did you, like me and many others, just stumble into a sales role?
Yeah, basically, like fresh out of uni. When I was at uni, I wanted to join the military. My dad was in the army for most of his career, and the whole time I was alive growing up, my dad was in the army, so it was very sort of familiar in that sense. I sort of always ironically joke and say the safe option was joining the army. So I really wanted to join the military, and then I sort of realized, I went through the whole process and then sort of realized like I don't do too well under authority, or at least that style of authority. And so they funnel you out pretty successfully. And yeah, I was sort of given the pretty like obvious fact that I wasn't really necessarily completely suitable for it. And then what that meant was when I was leaving uni, I had no idea what I was going to do. the world was my oyster, but I had no clue. And a good friend of mine, Grom, sort of introduced me to his boss, his like senior staff, and they took a punt on me. And some sort of pretty average uni grad was given a job in M&A tech sales. And that was my entrance into sales, my baptism by fire. And then from there, it was sort of, I started to realize how much I liked business generally. Started to understand like mergers and acquisitions and how like businesses and assets were sold and bought, IPOs, the whole process of that, SEC filing, all that sort of stuff. I was fascinated by, this is how business really works. You know, people start businesses, sure, you have an idea and you give value to customers, but then in terms of real sort of big corporate business, you're talking about, you know, buying and selling assets, and how that all worked was fascinating to me. So I got that kind of introduction, and then like every job after, about a year and a half in, it was pretty dry to me, and, you know, the novelty wore off. And so I started something new, went into the cannabis industry, the medical cannabis industry, which back in 2018, that was a pretty nascent industry, and definitely niche. But it was fascinating to me, the kind of alternative medicine space and the power that had for some people. And I really believed in it. And so I was part of the team that essentially built the first like import and distribution service for medical cannabis in the UK. So it was like super exciting. We were like in the news, you know, we were sort of doing a lot of PR, and it was sort of the topic of discussion in the news at the time, was sort of medical cannabis. Since then, a lot more has overtaken it in terms of more interesting subject matter. But I loved it when I was there. I had to leave for, I guess, like political reasons within the business, ultimately, and then moved on to work for a fintech, Danish fintech. It was SaaS sales again. I was sort of like, I don't know, grew pretty bored of it after about a year.
This is job 3 then?
It's job 3 now.
And you were 18 when you got into the first one then, and it just kept rolling?
I was 21, so I was 21. Fresh out of uni, yeah. And then back in 2018 was like when medical cannabis was legalized in the UK. And I think it was 2019 that I actually joined, if I'm right.
But you never thought you were like going to get into sales? This kind of just was happenstance after you got out of uni?
The sales stuff, it was just like, I think when you have some soft skills, people
let's go
take a punt on you.
Yeah.
I mean, we can get into the actual skills that sales does give you with experience, but in terms of getting into it, it's the best one if you just got decent soft skills. So yeah, they took a punt on me, and then I did various sales roles since then, but it was definitely something I fell into. Yeah,
it's so common. I mean, I was certainly one just like that out of uni. I just jumped into, I was selling oil. I said this before in an episode, but I was just selling.
Dude, when you said that, I was like, no way. That's the most like rogue. That's the most rogue shit to be selling. Fresh, like,
it's
fresh.
brutal.
It's so random. Like, I think tech's a really common one. Like, people fall into tech. I mean, like, arguably every business in some capacity is a tech business. But when you're talking about like SaaS sales, like software as a service, that's a really common one to fall into, I think.
Sure.
But yeah, oil, man, that's
brutal.
funny, man.
Totally brutal. So what were the things, like, because everyone has a backstory, how they got in. And I think it's quite clear to me and to you that a lot of people don't necessarily love what they're doing. But what, like, are the things that you didn't actually like about it? And this is probably different for everyone, but what are the things you didn't like?
I think very initially, the first thing that really like was the obvious thing that I didn't like was the repetition. So when you first go into sales, you usually enter, which you've spoken about before on the podcast, you usually enter in as like a BDR or SDR or like inside sales rep or whatever they call it. And that's just like hitting the phones. It's like old school boiler room stuff. So sending out a bunch of emails, personalizing the message, you know, churning it out, numbers game, all that sort of stuff. And it's just like repetitive. All you're trying to do is book meetings for people who take the meeting. And I think that's really brutal stuff. Like, that's why I call it a baptism by fire, because it's like, pretty mind numbing. Like, there's some people that I remember thinking, looking at my colleagues, I still to this day, loads of respect for these people. Still connecting in some capacity with them. But I remember seeing them, looking at them and just thinking, you're wired differently to me. You're just wired
Why?
differently.
Because they loved it?
They just, they could do it. They were just sort of like churning out every day, Monday to Friday. Yeah. I don't think they loved it. I just think they were just like okay with just doing that. Just that one task of booking meetings. That's all they needed to do. And I think I was just so creatively fired up in my head, so imaginative, so I wanted to do so much more that it just frustrated me that I was doing this one thing. And I was also young and impatient, and I didn't recognize that you had to do, when you enter the working world, you just suddenly, you're figuring out your own thing. You didn't really necessarily realize that you have to spend a certain amount of time doing one thing, prove that you're an expert in that, move on, whatever. It was only 5 months really until I moved on to be an account manager. So the people that took a punt on me initially took another punt on me again. I think they just sort of believed in, I don't know, my communication skills or how I held myself or something. And they put a punt, they threw me into the deep end again as an account manager. And that was when I really got my like proper sales stripes, I think. Yeah.
That leap from SDR to account manager at the time feels like the best thing ever as well. You're like, fuck yeah. Like a little bit more money.
Yeah. It wasn't heaps of money either, by the way. That first job, although it was like tech sales, it was pretty old school legacy tech. And the money could have been good if you stuck out. It depends on the company you work for, but some companies, the company itself only sees the money 6 months down the line, and it could be in those days I could close a deal that was like a 12-month contract, and really they'd only receive the bill at the end because it was dependent on how much they essentially used the product. So it was dependent on how many pages went through the product. So it was all of these legal and financial documentation that would be hosted on our product. And depending on how much of that was in there, you'd charge literally per page. And so you'd be charging 70p a page, but there'd be, hundreds of thousands of pages on any given thing. So it was big deals, but yeah, I didn't get paid heaps, but I definitely remember in terms of status and recognition and all that sort of stuff, it was like, this is great, this is where I want to be. But in terms of what I hated, I mean, one of it was repetition. Another thing that's just stayed true throughout my sales career, and I think this maybe is different if you go really sort of high up into more sort of strategic sales with very large enterprises. But I just always found that even in the best deals, even in the best sort of most collaborative, most mutually beneficial deals, people still don't really want to hear from you. Like that was the thing that kept annoying me. It's just like the lack of respect for salespeople. You've
got your hand out a little bit.
Yeah,
it feels like.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's kind of part of business.
I get that is a good point. It is part of any business, but I know what you mean. That feeling of there's like a 10% resistance to like everything. Yeah,
you're always trying to convince them to be your friend or be interested in what you're saying or like be interested in the value you're proposing. Constantly selling. And I think the best sales are the ones where the person buying really wants it, understands the value of it. And in SaaS sales, it's difficult to communicate that. Sometimes you're communicating to some people who don't really think about ROI. Sometimes you are, but then you're communicating things that they don't understand. They don't understand the impact of the technical thing you're selling. So it's like you're constantly convincing, constantly trying to, get them to understand what you're trying to say. And that's difficult. It's pretty draining.
The thing is though, it's like, it's tolerable because nowadays in a SaaS office, it's actually sweet. It's like when I tell some people about the luxuries I had, people would be shocked. People like, I remember like chatting to somebody who's a nurse or somebody who is in the civil service or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I actually had 3-course meal, a bottle of wine, full night out paid for, and I'm fuming about it. And they'd be like,
yeah, well, it's mad. What people don't necessarily understand is like modern, like, Silicon Valley tech, all that sort of stuff. The margins are silly. Like, if you were to speak to a business person from 100 years ago and tell them that you have a 90% or 80% margin on your product, and the product isn't even a tangible thing, and it's on something called the internet, and we just sell access, like they would be like, what are you on about? But it's just the truth. Like there's big margins, and it's also, I mean, not so much now because, you know, the markets have changed and many businesses are obviously like chasing profitability, but especially before you had very cash heavy. So like just cash mattered.
Loads of money.
You know, other people's money. They're running on OPM, other people's money. You know, it's just constantly, you got these like very good fundraisers leading companies, and then they have a ton of money, but they haven't got like proven profitability. And so you just had like especially few years ago, you just had loads of businesses with loads of money.
Yeah.
And they just don't know how to spend it, essentially, or they just can't spend it quick enough.
But you've got to keep people happy, especially when they're doing something. Like people in a SaaS role, like they're actually very valuable to you. Like you'd want to be spending money to keep them. They're making you a fuck ton of money.
Yeah, and I mean that's part of it, isn't it? Like you gotta. I mean, you're always going to be kept. You're always going to be kept in something that, like, is good for a lot of reasons. I think, especially in my recent role, it was difficult to like be annoyed at the thing you're doing. So you're doing the thing and you feel like, oh, I'm complaining because someone doesn't want to receive my email. Boo-hoo, like get over it. You know, my dad went to war. It's not like a big deal. I'm just at a desk, like doing the thing. And anything I say about not liking my career, ultimately, it's a privileged conversation to even have. You know,
I think
I fully recognize
that's the big caveat. It's always the caveat. You
always.
know?
But I think it's important to constantly think about where you are most suitable, because a happy you is a productive you. And if you're doing something that like you said at the start, lights you up, then, you know, that's really all that matters, because you're going to be most valuable to the people around you if it lights you up, if you're bringing your full self to it. And ultimately, every single time I was in a role that wasn't correct for me, wasn't quite right for me, a year and a half in, I just started to really feel it heavily, like this heavy feeling of, this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. This isn't what lights me up. It drains me. Like I feel, even though I'm getting a free lunch and I'm getting, you know, an amazing office and amazing people around me and all these benefits, I still go to work dreading it. I still dread every call I have for no good reason other than I just can't face, you know, being in that call again. It drains me. No matter what it is, it could be something that someone else looks at and thinks, I would love to do that. But if it's not right for you, then it's not of benefit to the people around you and the world generally. I think, like, you got to find the thing that actually is your thing. And I've just always felt like this sort of burning desire to try and find that, really.
I want to get to all the running and shape that journey and intertwine it with this as well. But just staying on this for a second, like that feeling of, you know, it's not that bad, but just inside you, after a while, after a period, you just feel like there's something more, and like I have to do something different with my entire life. This can't just be the one thing I do. And, you know, Gallup's study, like in the UK, over 90% of people are dissatisfied, disengaged with their job. And I think that what you just described really well is part of it.
Yeah, and I think most of those people don't realize that it can be another way. Reality is, most people say they're dissatisfied with one breath and then say, but that's just the way it is, with another. Like that, it doesn't, you know, everyone feels like that. You know, a job's a job, work is work, you know. And I think you can go beyond that and do yourself some respect by saying you are actually capable of putting your mind to something that is going to be way more important to the people around you and to you. And, you know, your 50-year-old self, 60-year-old self will thank you for doing that. But if it's just stuck in something, kind of knowing you don't like it and sort of complaining about it, and and just saying to yourself that it can't be another way. I think you need, and that's why, bro, like, that's why I really believe in this, like what you're doing here. And, you know, it's hard starting out a podcast, you know, really trying to sort of put yourself out there and put what you believe out there. It's really tough. But the ultimate like vision of this podcast and everything you're doing, I believe, is trying to have people realize that it, like, there is a path outside of this. There is something you can do today, every day, to just increase the chances that you can actually get out of the current job you're in that isn't serving you. Like, that's, I feel like I'm using your words.
Yeah, well,
but like
we've discussed this at length.
Yeah, I just love, like, because it's also been something that I've been passionate about, you know, the belief that you can actually like put the work in, you can do it, you can try and like put your mind to something that lights you up and energizes you and is just better for the people around you. And I just believe really strongly there are so many people that just have so much potential that's just not untapped. It's not tapped, you know, it's untapped potential.
And the thing is, it's so hard to get to like bring yourself to that point.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll say this, and I'll fucking say it publicly now. You were an instrumental part in me doing this because you were encouraging me. You were reminding me of why this is important and why it's important to me and to other people as well. So,
yeah, man,
you know, it's something I think we both connect over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Many a sauna session.
Many a sauna, yeah.
Many a sauna and ice plunge session.
Therapy. Do you know, funny enough, right? I was reading a book recently called 4,000 Weeks.
Yeah.
Don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it talks about what we just talked about there, which is like the concept of a job and how that actual, like even that thing, right? It wasn't really around up until the Industrial Revolution when just time became like a commodity in that sense. Like, it kind of, I think he said it came around when it was farming to some degree, but then the Industrial Revolution created shift work and selling batches of your time. So like, that's actually only kind of a new thing. Traditionally, we would have been little, if you go way back, little group, me, you, the lads, and our parents, and somebody go get a bit of grub, somebody would wash the clothes, somebody's getting water, and we come back. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about this when I think I said to you, I was thinking about this with the concept of the 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Of the 5-day working week.
Yeah.
And how like 9 to 5, that's 8 hours. And there was like a pitch from, I guess, like the people of all of these factories, like, you know, all these car factories.
That was it. Yeah.
So you have all these car factories and people saying, we don't want to be working ridiculous hours. And so you had the unions sort of rise up and say, we want 8 hours of work, 8 hours of sleep, and 8 hours to do what we want. And that was essentially the kind of pitch. And I think it was Henry Ford that first sort of agreed to that. And it was like a massive move in like people, in workers' rights, to get the 9 to 5 instead of just factory working. So the 9 to 5 itself is suited for a factory environment. And now we just sort of, we kind of just accept that all jobs, even the ones where you could just take your laptop and work from home, it's still 9 to 5, like this expectation that we all work the same hours. Whereas like, we have the ability to schedule emails. We have the ability to, mute our emails and not look at them and sort of send people emails at a different time, but have them respond, you know, throughout the day. Everything can be done remotely and very efficiently. We don't necessarily always need to be on at the same time. There are ways that we can work differently. And I just find it very interesting that like this idea of 5 days a week, 9 to 5, it just is mad. And I've spoken to you about as well. We actually just cycled through Mile End together. And I said to you, I used to live here. Wasn't a very great time for me. And when you asked me as well, what was the one thing you hated about sales initially? The repetition. I got to I immediately, when I started work outside of, like fresh out of uni, I started work a few months in, I got really pretty down. I don't want to use the other D word because I don't know if I was clinically depressed, but I was very sad. Because of the repetitive 7-day week, it was 5-2, 5-2, 5-2, 5-2, 5-2, 5-2. Just and that was just ringing through my head. Just this idea of just wait, so we just do this Gone all through school. I had like explored all these different things. I've gone to university, explored something, done loads of stuff. And then I went into work and I was doing this sales role and it was 5-2, 5-2, 5-2, 5-2. And I was like, when do we only take a break when we ask permission to do so? And then we can take a week off and then we go back to that rhythm. And it sent me west. I was just like, this is nuts. And I got over that eventually, the idea that like this structure, exists for a reason and, it's helpful, sort of helped me get out of that. But it was like a sudden shock so I just have to like do this now. And it really felt like that kind of factory worker, do the thing under the cosh. I struggle with that.
And you're just exchanging time in order to receive money. That's it. Here, have my time.
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean,
that book, man, that book really made me rethink, not like fundamentally, but man, it gave me some things to think about with regards to time. And I pulled a quote from it, right? I think you're going to love this quote. Let me read this to you. This is a beauty. Our lives, thanks to their finitude, are inevitably full of activities that we're doing for the very last time. Just as there will be a final occasion on which I pick up my son, a thought that appalls me, but one that's hard to deny, since I surely won't be doing it when he's 30. There will be a last time that you visit your childhood home, or swim in the ocean, or make love, or have a deep conversation with a certain close friend. Yet usually there'll be no way to know in the moment itself that you're doing it for the last time. And indeed, there's a sense in which every moment of life is a last time. It arrives, you'll never get it again, and once it's passed, your remaining supply of moments will be one smaller than before.
Bruh. Yeah, man, it's good. I think I remember, I think it was Sam Harris. I remember him talking once about that exact thing. And he was talking about it in the context of being present and mindfulness. And he told a story about, and it always stuck with me, about he doesn't go skiing much. He's been skiing a fair amount of times in his life, but he hasn't been for ages. And it may well be that the last time he went was the last time he'll ever go again. It's probably unlikely he's going to go skiing, all this sort of stuff. And he took that completely for granted. But had he known that last time he went skiing would be his last time, he would have been far more present and he would have enjoyed the moment a lot more. And that's always stuck with me, It's like every time you're doing something, even when sometimes you do have those moments where you're like very grateful and you're like, this is it. This is, the moments where you say, this is the life. You're just very present.
I kind of just had one.
Yeah. Nice. Nice. Yeah, dude.
So I think time is just so intertwined in this whole subject, because someone who is where you have just been and I was, and who feels the same way we feel, I feel like when you think about your time that way, you can't help but just feel some compulsion or like sort of being pulled towards something. Feels hard to actually get away from.
Yeah.
Right. So you finally did it. You've done the fucking thing.
Done this thing.
So you've done this, and obviously we're going to get into social media. I want to get into like your journey with running as well. But let's start by saying, what the hell is so good about running?
What's so good about running? Yeah. So I never know how to answer this, because like reality is not everyone's going to love running, but I do believe that there are a lot of people that could love running and think they hate it. I do love running, obviously. But I guess I can tell you what I love about it, like personally. I love that it's just a natural movement. It's very accessible. You can just get out and like just go for a run. Like it really simplifying it. You can just go out with some shoes, some shorts and a t-shirt and a sports bra and go for a run. Like I won't be wearing the sports bra usually.
I think you should potentially consider it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Hey.
I remember you telling me in the kitchen, actually going back to that, what we said earlier, that first interaction. And I remember you said to me, you mentioned ultras, and I was like, ooh, really? Yeah. And then I was like, eyes lit up. I was like, whoa, I've never met a dude who's done an ultra. And I just was so curious about what goes through your head on an ultra. How like the time you're just out there. Because, you know, I go to the gym, right? I've been on a run before. I get it.
And I want to say the first time I don't think I brought it up. I didn't just go, hey, yeah, I'm Tommy. By the way, I run ultramarathons. You're making it sound like, I do bring it up.
Yeah, for clarity, let me rephrase.
I think Zoras was like, by the way,
I think
he's like a runner who does like ultras or something.
Yeah. And I went and just ran with it.
But yeah, you were one thing that was cool. You were very curious about that, and I love talking about that stuff. I mean, what I am very passionate about is the ultra trail running. Like running itself, I do love, and I kind of got into it in my own way. But I've always felt pretty disconnected from runners and the running world generally. When I started running, it was always a very individual thing for me, and I think there's a ton of people out there who are like this. So just go for a run, you know. I always sort of picture myself as the guy who, I didn't wear all the like nice fancy running stuff, maybe just had a hoodie on and then going out and just sort of doing my running. But, you know, slowly but surely I sort of started to find things within running that really resonated with me and that I really liked. And usually those things were the really long distance kind of, oh, that's a mad challenge. Like, you know, oh, that guy's sort of I'd see an article on a guy who's done like a triathlon, you know, he's done a triathlon equivalent of the length of the UK, you know, for each discipline or whatever, you know, I'd be like, whoa, that's a mad thing. Or I'd hear about like Ultraman or, you know, Ironmans. And I was really obsessed with that longer distance triathlons and all that sort of stuff. And then it was actually in COVID, the very first kind of lockdown, where I was watching a lot of YouTube. I used to watch like these sort of running documentaries and stuff. But I remember when I was in lockdown, I remember really getting like emotional about some of these documentaries. If you've never like watched them, there's just like a ton of really well-produced little sort of ultra running docos on YouTube and all sorts. And they're always quite like emotional. They bring you through the story of the runner, and you know, whether it's like Billy Yang or West Plate does some like real great ones where he documents his own race, been doing it for years. And I just felt like really, some of them were like really long, like an hour long, you know, someone taking on like a 200-mile race and like documenting the whole thing. I'd feel really emotional. And I remember realizing this is the vibe that, like within running that I love, like this camaraderie, the culture. It was specifically like American trail ultras, some of the famous ones like Western States, or documenting like Moab 240 and all those. I was just like, this is the kind of complete vibe that I want, and I can see myself being a part of that. It's a love for the outdoors. It's a love for pushing the body to the limits and seeing what's possible. And it's this camaraderie where, because every individual kind of is curious about their full potential, they also want to encourage others to be curious alongside them so they can realize their own full potential and that other person's full potential together. It's like this real amazing, unique approach to running, but it's especially unique within sport. Like, you just don't see that heaps. Like, there's a lot of competitiveness in a different way in other sports, I think, and something that really resonated with me was this ultra running. And that's what became a passion, I guess, like 4 or 5 years ago, was just this pursuit of, you know, longer, further, and more kind of insane, just to sort of explore my own mind and explore what I was capable of. And then when I started doing them, it was, you know, a real reality check that turns out ultras are really hard. Who'd have thought? But it was this exploration of the mind. And there have been times where I've done like a mountain 100K in the last few years, and I've reached a level that I haven't yet reached, you know, and I've sort of unlocked this new area of my brain and potential and like headspace. And it's all through the physical endeavor of pushing yourself no matter what, like giving yourself no choice but to take another step. And I think there's something beautiful about that. And really my interest in running is less actually about splits and PRs and how fast can I go and carbon plated shoes, and far more about exploration of nature and of my nature and of the like potential I have and the capacity I have to go further and do more. That's what I really love about it.
Like, I remember when you said that, it kind of makes you emotional to me, and I get that. I really do get that. And I think it's probably something to do with just the sheer scale of an ultra. It's like the great white shark of fitness pursuits. It's you know what I mean? It's like this big, and you said this actually before, it's like this unattainable thing before you do it, before you sign up, before it's like quote unquote possible in your head. It's like, it's so far away. So I get why it would be, why you found that emotional.
Yeah, and it's something pure about it as well. Not to be on another podcast and talk shit about cyclists. I'm not doing that. But it's a great example because cycling, there are some absolute beasts and records are broken, and there's all sorts of technology in running, of course, as well. But there's something more pure about running in my mind, because it's just how far can you go, how much can you do on foot. Whereas something like cycling, there's a lot in the technology behind the bike and all of those sort of more obvious technological advancements. In my mind, whether it's true or not, I'm being very careful now because you might have
watch out,
avid
cyclists are coming.
I've also prefaced that I am a cyclist myself, maybe not as avid a cyclist.
I get what you're saying. Like
athlete.
it's cycling's fine. But it's not the same sort of. You're not carrying your own body the way.
Yeah, there's something pure about a human just taking themselves by foot over the mountains, seeing how far they can go, just purely their body. How far can they take their body without any kind of necessarily any sort of all that much sort of technological assistance. I find that more kind of. It's the same. I mean, if there was an ultra cycle, I would, still be emotional about the amount they'd put into it and the amount of sacrifice that they'd made to get there and all that sort of stuff. But there is this purity to running that attracts me to running, especially in the context of like adventure and trails and going places, you haven't been before, or like very few people have been before, and the advantage that being fit enough has for people who are fit enough. Like I've told this before, but I remember I was doing Val d'Aran with a friend of mine and Brim, and he and I got to the top of this climb, and it was like an insane climb. We got to the top, and the view in the Spanish Pyrenees was just like top stuff. Like it was, and we really felt like we deserved it. And the only way, other than taking a chopper up there, the only way to get up there was by foot and by being fit enough. And he turns to me and he says, "This is why it's good to be fit." Or he said something like, "This is why, we can be grateful that we're fit." And I was like, yeah, man, not everyone gets to do this, And I think there's that aspect of it, which just is awesome to me. The ability to be 70K into a race and be on the top of some crazy mountain you never would have been on top of had you not got into this stuff, I love that.
Isn't it so beautiful that is what's allowed you to escape what you felt like you were stuck to?
Yeah. And, it still stands as... I'm very privileged because I'm like exceptionally passionate about it and I want to do the thing that lights me up, for a living. But it's also available to people who don't want to make it their career,
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel very privileged.
I think that like the whole concept of the length, like the sheer pursuit. I remember watching your most recent one. I was actually in Albania. I was in a mountain myself.
Oh, yeah.
And me and Izzy were just watching your tracker, and it'd be like 5 hours in, and nowhere near finished.
Hardly started.
I'm like, this dude's been running for 5 hours, and it would show your trajectory you'd been up and down. And I could imagine, but I can't I won't know until I do one, right? But
Yeah, and you are going to do one.
I did say that,
Yeah, you
didn't
did
I?
say that.
I
You were
really
thinking
do.
about it.
Man, I do want to do it. You can probably see in me when you speak to me about it, I get fucking, like, I'm so drawn to it as well. I've just said it on a podcast now. I've kind of fucked it, haven't I?
Yeah.
I remember the video as well when you posted it after, and you're just like running. You're like 10K in.
Oh, yeah.
Just feeling all right, legs are good. And you'd be like 20K in. And then it'd be like 80K in. And I'm like, fuck. And 90K in. Legs are starting to hurt now. I'm like,
Yeah, it's funny watching it back because like it's literally like a minute and a half. It's like whatever it was, like 15 hours in a minute and a half, and it was absolutely brutal. But yeah.
You said I remember in one of the videos of you doing one that you got emotional at the end, and it was your first one. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I get I do actually get a bit emotional at the end of all of them. Like, not that emotional.
Fuck, dude, I get emotional at the end of a 5K sometimes.
All those endorphins, man. There's something to be said for that, you know. I've listened to podcasts and started tearing up on a run. Like, I think I feel more like emotionally delicate on a run. But I think the one you're referencing is Valderan, which is it's like my favorite. It's like my favorite memory, my favorite running memory. I always reference it as my favorite running memory because it was the first ultra north of 100K that I'd done, and also the context behind it was. Actually, I wrote about this in a newsletter. But the context behind it was that actually about a year before or so, I was very lost. I was in a like really sort of self-loathing kind of place, and I guess like I had the story after that time was that I'd kind of built up to a point where I liked myself again, and it was all through the pursuit of running and ultra marathons that I'd found that. And so when I crossed the finish line of a 105, which always ends up being a little bit longer, 105K mountain ultra, it took me like 21 hours. And I was like, you know, really struggling right at the end. When I crossed the finish line, Lou was there, egging me on, filming me finish, and I just felt a huge amount of self-pride, but also in the moment was reflecting on how proud I was of myself and how much I liked myself and how much that juxtaposed how I felt a year ago. And there was definitely something kind of more powerful happening in that moment that I don't think I'll ever forget.
Yeah, that feels like that ultra was almost a representation of your previous struggle, all ending at this point.
Yeah, and they talk about 100 milers and they say it's a lifetime in 100 miles.
Yeah,
because you go through, you know, a huge amount. And sometimes you'll be like on top of the world. Sometimes you don't feel like you can continue. Sometimes you find it in you to continue, and then you feel on top of the world again. You open doors, you know, throughout an ultra of any distance. But when you're out for that long, it's chapters, you know, and you got to kind of take whatever comes at you. It's a beautiful thing, bro.
Why did you not like yourself before?
I had been through. Well, I'd been through a breakup that should have happened earlier, and it was my fault that it didn't, and I felt really heavy about that. And then I sort of was, you know, I moved back because of that breakup, moved back into my parents' house, and it was like 26, didn't know what I was doing, had just broken up with someone in a, you know, not in a way that well, it wasn't in a bad way, it was very amicable, but, you know, I just felt like I should have done it earlier, and it was like I'd been lying for a long time.
You felt guilt.
I felt a huge amount of guilt, and I also was in a job selling some random Danish financial tech software, and I just didn't like it, and I just felt like really lost and like I was amounting to nothing. And yeah, I just guess I just didn't see myself in a very positive light, to be honest. I think that's pretty common. But I knew like I wasn't completely down and out enough to not do something about it. I'm very action oriented, and I think like I feel most comfortable when I take action and I feel like I have agency and I'm in control, and that comes in my mind from taking action and doing something about it. And so that was the moment where I quit my job, and I didn't have anything to go to. I just quit my job, had a small amount of savings because didn't spend much during COVID, and was on the pursuit to just try and find the thing that I was here to do that would be of value to others, you know, that and I started doing all sorts. I was in like a bedroom in my parents' house, just like, I was like a conspiracy theorist. There were Post-it notes on the wall. I was like doing like all these sort of Venn diagrams, Ikigai and all this sort of stuff, you know. I was just trying to find my thing, and I was just trying to find what I could do. I didn't want to be in the 9 to 5. I want to escape the thing. I want to try and like find out what energizes me. And I really took action, and I was working out a huge amount. I was running a huge amount. I was in seriously good nick. I was just out in the hills, and slowly but surely I was starting to find a bit of like passion for things. And I just started doing. I started like just taking action and finding the thing. And I started asking myself real fundamental questions and answering them childishly. So what I mean by that is, if you are lost, if you don't know what you want to do in life, ask yourself fundamental, really simple questions and answer them in a childish way. The questions being, what drains you? What energizes you? What lights you up? What could you talk about to your friends and talk their ear off about? What energizes you when you're in the pub, when you find someone who's into a certain thing and you're into it too? What could you talk about all night long? What are you kind of thinking about, like in terms of the jobs you're doing? When you think about what are your skills or what are you good at, think about why you're good at that. If you're good at sales, why are you good at sales? It's because you like people, you like talking to people, you like talking, you like communicating, you like presenting. Like, what are the real like simple things that you're good at, and start painting a picture of what you're good at, what energizes you, what drains you. And then you might start to figure out what sort of space you might want to work in, or what sort of roles really speak to your attributes and your characteristics. You got to start somewhere. And I think if you get too locked into thinking about departments within a company, like, oh, I could be good at marketing, or I could be good at sales, or I could be good at finance, you're just limiting yourself. Think about why you'd be good at finance. Think about why you'd be good at marketing, and answer the questions more childishly, more simply. That's what I started doing. I just started writing down, asking myself all these questions. I had notes on my phone for days about all of these simple questions to ask yourself, to really investigate and go deep, and ask yourself, what would your 7-year-old self answer to this question?
And so were you starting to like yourself at this point? Was this like the turning point from that then?
I think I gave myself a lot of agency. I gave myself a lot of autonomy and ability to sort of free myself from the kind of traditional sort of expectations, and went and pursued being a personal trainer. I did that extremely quickly. I was proud of how quickly I qualified, even in COVID times when it was difficult to book stuff. I went to Portsmouth for one of the sessions, and I went up to somewhere near Nottingham for another one of the sessions. Got a good friend of mine, a friend of ours, Ben, to be the kind of the pretend client in one examination, and then another mate to be a pretend client in another examination. Did it really quickly. I was proud of that, so I was giving myself evidence that I was capable of doing things. So I guess I was starting to like myself more, But it took a long time. I think it took about a year and a half really until I was like.
And then the end of that ultra was just like it all came together.
Yeah, and I feel like that ultra, because I was chasing 100. I was chasing like a mountain 100K, and in my mind, it was a moment where I was like a bit more set in place.
Were you posting at that time, or?
So I started posting. Yeah, I started posting when I was figuring out my way. You know.
Yeah.
I fundamentally believe that. And we've spoken about this before privately, but I fundamentally believe that whatever you like in life, whatever lights you up, whatever hobbies or topics you are good at and passionate about, you should produce within those spaces. And I only say produce because I don't think you necessarily need to think about making social media content, or you necessarily need to think about being an influencer or any of sort of that kind of route. Not everyone's cut out to do that, but you need to produce in that space. So you need to provide value of some kind in that space. And with the internet now, there's so many options for you to start producing, whether it's starting a blog and doing written, whether it's starting a Facebook page and like putting a group together and getting interest in that group, whether it's doing recipes online and selling your recipe book, or sharing it amongst friends, whatever it is. It could be on social media but without your face. You just have to produce and provide some sort of value, and that's what I started doing. I was like, I'm going to just start producing running content because I'm into it, and then I guess like just learn from there, like action, lessons followed action basically.
It's a great way to do it. Find what you love.
Yeah.
Zero in on that. Post about it. Like you said, you can if you can chat to somebody in a bar, with joy and with glee, and knock back 3 pints and just continuously burn the ear off one another, that's your starting point.
Yeah.
Post about that. See what happens after 2 years.
There's so many people into so much stuff that they just don't do anything about it.
Everyone loves something.
So and if you don't love something, you need to start doing more than your day job and Netflix, because you need to start
what do you love?
What are you reading about online that's not social media? Like if you were to have an evening to yourself behind a laptop and all of social media and stuff was gone, and maybe all of online shopping was gone, what would you read about? What would you research about? What would you do on the internet? And think about what you're interested in and how you can wriggle your way into that space and actually start making connections and start making, start creating value for people. There's a way to get into every space without any experience, just by providing value in that space. I mean, that's all that business is. All that business is saying to people, I can solve that problem for you, and then solving that problem and charging for it. That's all it is. And you can solve enough problems to build a reputation, or you can provide enough value to build a reputation, and all of a sudden you can start selling that leverage. I feel like that's really all it is in some way. And you can do that in a really simple way on the side. You can start providing value in a space that you care about on the side. The way
you've done it is spot on. You're actually the model student. If I was recruiting for somebody to be the perfect model student who's got out of their job doing something that they absolutely love on the side successfully, bringing the finances up to a point and then leaving, nailed it. You didn't nail it the first time, actually.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you learned from your mistake.
This is it as well. I think, optically for other people, you need to not care about this, but optically for other people, it could be that they only see the last 5 months and then think, oh, it's just all luckily happened for that guy, because visibly it's 5 months. But, as you know, the real story for me in my head started 8 years ago, and I started producing content 4 years ago. But the journey of finding the thing, the effort, the investigation, the curiosity, all of that stuff, the never settling for a bog standard job, moving jobs, moving industries, doing the thing, trying to find my way. I've been doing it since I left uni. And the reality is I finally found that thing. It may optically look like it's, my Instagram's popped off and so I've just started to monetize, or I've just sort of left and I'm now a full-time content creator, whatever. That's not actually the reality. The reality is 8 years ago, I was looking for the thing that lit me up. 4 years ago, I started producing running content. 2 years ago, I started realizing this was the real shit. And now I'm in a position to actually go and make a business in a space that I've tried to build leverage in for the last 4 years. But really everything that's happening in the listener's head right now is the start of the journey.
Go to the drawing board, proverbial drawing board, figure out whatever it is you love, start posting.
Start
what happens.
Start figuring out what your best medium is. There's so many different mediums. You can post on social media, sure, but you start creating, start producing.
Was your goal when you started doing like your first posts was it always, I'm going to get out of my job someday with this? Was that it? You knew straight away?
My goal when I started posting was to build some sort of leverage so that I would gain attention and potentially bring on clients for my PT business. So, every PT out there should really be posting. I don't know, unless they're running a perfect little PT business, they've got enough clients and they've got good word of mouth locally, whatever. Most PTs really, if they're trying to sort of have an online business of any kind, should be posting on social media. So yeah, just started posting to get clients initially. And then from there, just like the people, I would just get the occasional message that would make me go, this has resonated with someone. Like, that's sick. Like, someone's really liked this video, really appreciates this.
Were you enjoying the process anyway, regardless?
Yeah, I really liked it. Even as a kid, I made videos and stuff. Like, they weren't ever any good, but I would have like a camcorder or something. I'd make videos and even as a
JVC,
really young kid,
fucking handheld camera.
Stuff like that. I was actually I was at my parents' place recently. They're moving, and so we're like unloading all of it. And it's my old like childhood room. Well, not really childhood room, but I was there from the age of like 16, 17 to early 20s, and they've lived there ever since. And so I was clearing out all this stuff from my childhood, like in boxes, and there's like this old Toshiba camcorder and like all my old iPods and stuff. But I remember that camcorder. I used to make videos. I used to like stitch them up on Windows Media Player. I always liked that kind of stuff. I loved being creative in that way. So social media for me was just a way to revisit that. I was like, oh yeah, I remember like cutting up videos and making videos. It was always something I really loved doing. I thought I had an eye for. And although my videos on social media, arguably are pretty simple, I love the process. I love the process of creating a narrative, creating a story, communicating something, both audibly, like visually and audibly. Yeah. Your
stories are great. I always, like, if somebody mentions running, I'm like, yeah, you should check out Tommy. It's good shit. And I remember looking, because I went deep before we met up today.
Yeah.
And I was just looking at some of them, and it's just wild to see how far it's come. And what was really motivating for me, especially as I am at the beginning or like earlier in my journey of this endeavor, was seeing you at like really low, relatively low to now, amounts of views. So you'd have like a couple thousand, which to you now, you hit 140,000, by the way. Saw that.
Yeah,
nice.
Just 2 days ago.
Sick.
Or yesterday.
But like, if you got 1,000 views now, you'd be like, right, well, is the algorithm broken?
Yeah. Something's happened to that video.
Where's everyone?
Yeah, something's happened to the video. If it's that, it's nuts. I did that not long ago. I think it was actually just when I sort of when there was 100,000 people on Instagram. 100,000. I was like, man, that's nuts. Like, that is bonkers. And I remember going through old stuff, and it's like 10 likes, 15 likes, 2 likes, 20 likes, single digits, loads of, like, really just, it's family and friends, like good friends sort of liking, trying to support me for months and months and months, and then eventually you start getting...
I could see when you got better. I could actually like tell. I was like, oh, I see what he's doing there.
I remember videos that did, like, I scrolled through and I was like, I remember feeling like that one was like so good. I remember being so ecstatic by how well that had done, and it's like 200 likes, which now, is not very many to me because of the scale that it's grown to. But back then, I just remember being so psyched by that. I was just like, 200 people have gone, yeah, give me some of that. Give me some of that. And I was like, yeah, man, that's sick. Someone, like, people are resonating with it. Like, occasionally. I remember when my first, like, video that got 10K views went up, and I was just like, 10,000 views, man.
Dude, I saw, like, one of them, I said, because I was scrolling through, it was like 6,000, 4,000, you know, kind of around that area.
Yeah.
And then one of them was just 203
just
out
like,
of
boom.
nowhere. And it was on the 3rd of February. I wrote it down. I was like, I'll see if he remembers this. Do you remember what it was?
3rd of February. Was it?
Last year, 2023.
3rd of February, 2023.
Do you remember that video?
No, which one?
It was actually just nothing noteworthy even. It was just you getting up at 5:30 in the morning, showing that you were tired.
Really?
Yeah, and it just, boom. I was like, that must have been crazy, because you always say to me with, like, making videos, don't always try and make it this big spectacle of a thing. Just put it out there. Just try and put it. And this was the perfect example. I was like, this is what he always fucking tells me.
That's so interesting. So I was like getting up. I was like, oh, I'm just getting up. It's 5 a.m. I'm annoyed about that.
This is 5:30 a.m. over on a just.
Oh my days, yeah. It is funny, and do you know what? I've always said this to you. If you churn out enough, you realize that sometimes the ones that do incredibly well are super low effort, and it's both really great and exciting, but also frustrating, because there's so many videos you put loads of effort into and do dog shite, and then you put out a video that you've done in the back of a car because you're bored, and it just does incredibly well. I remember doing this stupid meme one once, and if you watch people,
I remember this.
People just do nothing. It was like one of the characters, I've forgotten his name, which annoys me because I'm a big fan. He was just sort of saying. I can't remember
what was it again. He said something very offhand.
Something offhand, like, I don't really believe in time, you know, or something like that.
Yes.
You know, I think it's a conspiracy by the Illuminati. And I put the caption, like, when people ask me what my 5K time is, and it was just kind of funny.
Stupid,
and it did really well. And I was like, man, I put so much effort into all my posts. And then I just like sort of scraped together some sort of slightly crappy meme thing. It does incredibly well. But also, that's not. There's actually there's something deeper to be said for that, because like sometimes the meme stuff, it might do a bit of work. It does well, gives you a bit of dopamine because it does well, but no one's following a page for that.
Sure.
You know, like very few people are actually following a page for that content. Really, the stuff that I feel most proud of is the stuff that provides real value, and people go, oh,
so
this
true.
is sick, you know, thank you so much. I've been, you know, and then they will follow because they want more of that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's funny how you can just sort of nonchalantly put out like something crap and then it does incredibly well. But that's it, man. Social media. I think what I've learned, some of what I've learned about social media, to be honest, is that it's created for connection. Like, people want to connect with people. There's no getting around the fact that it's personal branding, really, in some way, unless you are, you know, you approach it in a different way. If you have yourself on it, people do want to connect with that individual. And in my opinion, if it's too highly produced, there's a disconnect. You don't feel like that person is speaking individually to you. You feel like they're putting on a show. You feel like they're sort of putting on, making this production for the audience.
Masses.
It's for the masses, and you're just one of them, sort of as a voyeur looking in. What you really want to do is try and connect with the individual on the other side of the phone. You know, the person who is actually watching your stuff. You need to talk to them. Stop trying to create perfect content. Talk to people, like, hook them in, get them interested, get their attention, tell them a story, land it, tell them something that's like real and connects with them emotionally in some way, whether it's motivating, inspiring, or if it's just educational and it makes them go, yeah, okay, sweet, I feel empowered to do the thing and fix the problem. You have to speak to the individual. And I think my content has always been pretty simple. And I fit it into my life. I don't necessarily always sit down and create or allocate time to create. A lot of it's when I'm running or like just using my life.
Birds.
Yeah, I'm just sort of documenting, but also creating at the same time, I guess. And I think that works better and that's one of the reasons why the ones you put no effort into work well, because sometimes they're just real. They're just a bit more real, and people connect with that, and they're like, yeah, I like that. I'll follow that because I want more of it. I
have always thought that your videos like are different. I'd look at them, I'm like, I can't quite tell what Tommy's
Really?
doing differently, but he's hitting on something there. And one of the things you said to me before was that you've gotten a lot of feedback saying that it doesn't feel overproduced.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just you chatting. It's like
Yeah.
you're having a one-way chat with me. I can't say it in back, but you're saying it to me.
I think when I watch other creators, the ones I really like are the ones that just feel, they don't feel overproduced. They're the ones I really like. I just like the sort of, a bit of a stitch, like they do a stitch or a sequence or whatever they call it, and then it's just sort of like them holding the camera and speaking to the camera in a captivating way, and you just feel like you're connecting with them as an individual or something.
As the viewer, it feels like it's for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's like, and it's just them with their phone. Like the reality is, they're engaging with social media. That's all it is. They're engaging with social media with their phone, like you are. You're on their level. They're not like getting up a camera, produce. And there's a time and place for high production, high quality production, like this.
No, man.
Sitting here with sick cameras and like a mic.
Oh my God.
But with social media, that's why social media is unique in terms of content. You have to play to the platform's strengths, and the platform's strength with social media, with Instagram, is you gain access to a person, like behind the scenes with their story, even with reels. Like when you're doing like personal branding stuff and you want to provide some value, you have to like connect more, I think.
I just was thinking of as well, one of the funniest videos on your feed. Obviously, the connection and all that stuff is good, right? But one of them, you just completely slagged everyone else off, right?
Oh, no.
Oh, man, I was in bits,
no.
right? So it was like a load of TikTok girls, okay? And they're just like, one after the other, it was just different TikTok girls saying, come run a 5K.
Oh, the come run with me. Come run with me.
Come run with me. Come run with me. And then at the end, it's just you in your bathroom facing the fucking mirror. And you're just like, nah. Do you reckon any of them ever saw that? I wonder.
I think so. I think some of them did. I was only like, obviously some people.
I'd say people got pissed off about that one.
I think if I did that now, I would get. People would get really annoyed.
Yeah.
Because like I'm not really that proud of that, because as you produce, you sort of refine what your style is. You know what is a bit immature and stuff, and it is kind of funny, but. I was sort of just taking the piss out of people who are like, come run with me. And it's like, I don't care about your run that much. And I've never wanted to necessarily like do too much of that, unless it's something like inspiring, whatever. But I mean, no shade at that kind of style of personal vlogging and stuff, but it was just quite a funny thing, because it seemed like everyone was saying come run with me, and I was just sick of the phrase come run with me. Stop saying come run with me at the start of your video. And then I was just sorry, nah, I'm good,
because I think it also kind of highlights the difference a little bit. Your ones, like we just said a minute ago, they're very for the person.
Sure.
They're for the individual watching, whereas those ones, super valuable and stuff, I'm sure, but like it's kind of just look at my run as opposed to here's help with your run.
I also sometimes worry
get some water. Keep going.
Sometimes I worry about like coming across a bit too seriously. Like a lot of my videos are sort of, I'm giving advice, or I'm saying you should do it this way, or like that's what my fear is, that I'm constantly telling people, I'm giving advice basically, aren't I? And what that does is it sort of puts me in a position of like, it sort of might paint the picture that I've got it all sorted, I've got it all like together, or I follow all of my own advice. And it's firstly not the case, but it's also like, it's quite an art form to strike a good balance between like comedy and value and advice. I want to make sure people know that I'm not always serious, but maybe I'm overthinking that. But I think
everyone who knows you,
maybe
anyone who follows you will like know you to the degree where it's like what it means, what it's
because exactly. And like if anyone's getting a lot of the time, I think if anyone's getting offended by
people
something,
got offended the other day when you put up a fucking post about sleep, and then you had parents giving out to you saying, "Well, we can't sleep."
Yeah, I mean that was literally it. The newsletter wasn't even out yet, but all I was doing was a standard weekly. I've just finished writing this newsletter. If you want to sign up, it's about sleep. And I just said, it's about sleep. And as I write these, I find it like I get passionate about the subject I'm writing about, and I've just got all fired up about how important sleep is. So yeah, sign up for the newsletter if you want to read it. It comes out tomorrow at 5 p.m. And I got like, within the next couple of hours, I was just chilling at home, just checked my phone, and I had like 8 messages or something of people saying, you know, easy for you to say you don't have kids, basically. And I was like, whoa, I mean...
Don't be coming at me.
Like, I'm not the only person in the world that doesn't realize it's difficult to sleep with kids.
It's like the way he said it, it's like you're having a go at them.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, I recognize it's hard. It's not always easy, but it doesn't like mean that sleep's not actually valuable for recovery. Literally all I was talking about was how valuable sleep is for recovery. Anyway, I sort of responded to it by just saying, you know, I didn't say shut up. I was just sort of saying, like, I know it's not easy to sleep when you have kids. And the amount of people that came in support, you know, like literally hundreds of messages from parents saying, ignore these people. They just, you know, they're just sleep deprived and like want to make it about them or whatever. I didn't get one more, not that I could read all the messages, but all the messages I was clicking on and I could read, hundreds of them, all of them were just saying like, oh, these guys need to get over themselves, you know. It's just a couple of bad apples. And that's usually what it is, you know, that ultimately you usually hear from the ones that are strongly opinionated about disagreeing with whatever you're saying. You don't really hear from the ones that are in support until you make a thing of it, and then you just get hundreds of people saying, I ignore them.
You've got a very like loyal following as well.
I think I feel like I do. I've got a bunch of legends.
You know, like you might look at 1% video, you're slagging someone off, having a laugh, like whatever, but just look at the other hundreds of like who you actually are.
Yeah.
And that's what I think stands out. You know, people are very in on you.
I love my following. Yeah, I genuinely love my following. I feel like everyone is... it's just legendary.
I oddly have an affinity to it as well because, you know, I've kind of seen... Remember in Broadway Market?
Oh, yeah,
We sat there in El Ganso and that guy just came up and it was like a very heartfelt, dude, hey, I just want to let you know I got back into running, or I was in a dark place and I kind of got back into... I think he said something like that.
He was like a fit guy. Like he was in good shape. He seemed like a sporty guy. And he was like, yo, you're the reason I started running. I'm like... Fucking hell, right, fair.
That's real, man.
And like...
I remember being quite, like, touched when that specific one stuck with me. Because you said it to me.
People are just like... And then someone else came up, literally out the same day, 2 minutes later, someone else came up and they were like... She was just like, keep doing what you're doing, like a real genuine kind of appreciate it.
Beautiful, man.
I am always like so humbled and complimented when people feel like they can come up if they see me. And they actually know my content and they feel like they can come up to me. I'm like, man, that's so sick, man.
Because they've spent, like, I think about it in the way that they've like spent time with you, spent a lot of time, like they've consumed a lot of your shit, but like you'll, in a way that's like, you know, the way a valve, water can only go one way through it and it can't go back the other way. It's kind of like this.
It's interesting. It's like when you know, if you, like anyone who you know, who you don't know, but you know through their content and stuff.
Sure.
You really feel like you know them.
Yeah.
Like, because you've watched so much of their stuff, and especially with the style of stuff I do, you know, often sort of give personal updates and that sort of thing. You know, people kind of know my story in some way. This, for example, if people are listening to this, I know the story.
I'd say most people have tuned out now.
Yeah, probably. It's a mad thing, Social media is nuts because it's just like all you're doing is free for anyone to just like put content out there and reach other people. And then all of a sudden, if you've got like any sort of following, people sort of following along and constantly watching your stuff, if you do end up bumping into someone who knows you, it's a nuts thing. You feel this like, it's this crazy experience, I think. And that's why I feel so passionate that you have to do something that actually you feel like brings value and people understand the value of, because then those interactions that you have, that connection you have with the people that, you know, the community that you're building is so much more powerful. And I mean, I'm just becoming even more and more, I'm becoming like really passionate about like creating this community. Because there's so many people I feel like are resonating with, you know, the approach I have or the style I have. And all it is just my own approach that I started to find things that resonated with me, and it gave me this like extreme love for running. And I just want the idea that other people could have that, because of some of the stuff that I put out is
I'm one
nuts.
of them. You know, I feel that way about That's why I fucking show people your content. I'm immediately like, I'm proud to kind of like be like, fucking look at Tommy, he's smashing it. Look at the way he's doing this. Look what he's about, you know?
Yeah,
and in the same way you say the same thing to me about what I'm trying to do here. And like, I've even started to feel that on a smaller scale, that like connection to what I'm doing. People like messaging me on LinkedIn and tapping me up on Instagram, getting WhatsApps. And it's like, I really appreciate it. I really do.
You know when people say like, oh, if I could just change one person's life, it's all worth it.
Yeah.
That is so true. Like that is genuinely so true. I got a message the other day from someone who, and it kills me I don't remember his name, but because of the whole sleep deprived parents debacle, I've got a lot of messages. But the ones that have come through in the last few days that I've managed to read, there's one guy who messaged me saying that he's an ex-drug addict who's fully addicted to drugs. He didn't specify what. And, you know, he's basically recovered now. He's still on sort of antidepressants and all sorts, and he's sorting himself out. But he was, you know, really in a dark place. And it's because of running that has like got him out of that. And specifically my content has helped him like really stay consistent with running. And he was just like messaging me and saying like, you're a real inspiration. The work you're doing is genuine and real. And like, also, I was like, that is silly shit.
Wow.
And when I get messages like that, honestly, like,
yeah, like I'm fucking chills right now.
Yeah. Like my hair's stand on end. Like I genuinely, when it gets hard, when I can't be bothered, or when it feels hard or it feels scary to, you know, go full time with this stuff, all I need to do is just remember that there are, you know, I just need to remember the few people, or the many people actually, but even just if I remember one message from one person that says, you've been instrumental in the change that I've made in myself, huge. And, you know, I usually am, it's because I'm British and like don't know how to take a compliment, but I'm like, oh, it's all you know, because I really believe that ultimately you're the only person that can change you. But if I have any influence, if I can be of any assistance, if I can give any sort of assist to that, it's a life well lived, I think. Yeah.
It's just so beautiful that this thing that has now like shaped your whole life, and you've used this thing that you are so lit up about to move away from this thing that you're not. And you and me are just so like an example of countless people who would like to say what you just said. Like the fact that you get to dedicate your life to something that you care about and that impacts people in that level. That guy, like that means so much to him that you can, that he can now do this, and he attributes it to you.
Yeah, I mean, I hope he realizes it's not because of me and it's because of him.
For sure.
Because it won't last.
It's so beautiful that you get to do it.
Yeah, it won't last if you lean on someone else, but it is all him. It is all him.
I agree. I actually agree with that. You know,
yeah.
We do all have to do it ourselves. We have to do it ourselves. But I think nobody gets anywhere alone.
Yeah.
We have people that inspire us, that move us, mentors, friends, whoever. You know, you do have to walk the walk yourself. You do, but it's so great that you have influenced that in some way, man. It's amazing.
Awesome. It's awesome. And that, like, to think that one video could have an effect on one person like that, that same video reaches many more people. And the idea that one person benefited like that means that maybe many other people benefited in a smaller way, but together
imagine
it's
all the people who didn't message.
Hugely impactful, yeah. Which should be a really I think that should be like a really empowering message for other people. If you can figure out something that the world needs, that you're good at and that you love doing, if you can just figure that out, your ikigai, there's so much value for yourself and for others to be found there. And this is what I was kind of talking about at the beginning. Like, there are so many people in offices who are just insanely capable, but I just think that their attention is in the wrong direction. It's on the wrong thing. And if they were to figure out what their ikigai was, which takes a long time, takes a lot of work, takes a lot of action, but if they were to do that, if they were to figure out what it was, I believe that they would be of more value. They would have more positive effect on the world if they really found the thing that the world needs, they're good at, they can get paid for. That's really what they should be doing. And I fundamentally believe we're all so unique. We all have our unique attributes and skills and characteristics. Why not let all of those skills and characteristics and attributes blossom? Because, some of them are just sort of left, untreated, and you never really see the full impact of that person. So it's powerful stuff, man. I feel like, it's on one hand, it's a privilege to be able to go and find your passion and do that. But on the other hand, it's a duty. Everyone should really be trying to find where they're most valuable.
I think the way you've done it with content is one of it's so accessible. Anyone can just pick up the phone. It's kind of hard though, right? I mean, I do appreciate it. Social media is kind of a tricky one psychologically, right? I mean, you've been like such a sort of shoulder to lean on when I've been kind of starting on this. I'm like, what am I doing here? And you'd be like, get out your own head. And I'm like, yeah, fair enough.
Stop making it about you, bro.
Yeah, right. Stop making it about you. It's the best line ever. Works any time. But what, like, if you were to give just one piece of advice for somebody to start posting content on social media, just one thing that would help them, what would it be?
Ship. I always say this. Just ship the thing. Like, it's going to be shit when you start. You are going to suck at social media when you start. You could be someone who's really incredible at social media when you start. I mean, lucky you. But everyone has a long way to go from the moment they start social media to the moment they produce good content that resonates with people and reaches people. Even if you start making good content from the get-go, it just probably won't go that far unless it has virality, in its sort of formula. Unless it's destined to be a viral video, it's not going to bring you followers. And even still, your first few posts, if you go viral with your first post, let's say you get 5 million views on your first post, and you have no other posts, who's going to follow you? Probably no one. Some will, because they'll follow from the video. But when people go on your page and they see you've done nothing else, it's unlikely they're going to believe in the rest of your content. It's unlikely they're going to believe that you're going to consistently post and provide value. When people follow, they are following for the consistent delivery of content. They want to consume more of what you're providing. So if you don't have a massive portfolio of valuable content, then you're unlikely to get follows. You're less likely, at least, to get follows. So ship the thing. Like, for the first reason of just posting is to get content on your grid. Just start getting a lot of content out there. The second reason is when you post, you learn, and actually posting, actually putting out there to public is the best way to put yourself under the pressure of scrutiny for each post, which is a good thing because it makes you try and make good content in some way. So you've got to balance the ship it, get it out there, doesn't matter all that much, with an actual care for how good it is. And I think that just the fact that it's going out there to the public will basically demand care from you of that content because it's going out there. You're putting it out there. If you were to, let's say you were doing a blog, but you never actually made it public, it's a journal.
Yeah.
So you don't care about how good you're writing, how well you're structuring it, how captivating it is, what the CTA is at the end. You don't care about anything because you're just doing it for yourself. As soon as you're actually putting it out there, you're putting content out to the people and it's being scrutinized and judged by others, then the scrutiny and judgment that you're putting on it is also of benefit. So make sure you are actually putting it out there and posting it. It's all very well being the best editor in the world if you don't make any videos, or if you don't actually post any videos. It's better if you're posting it, you're doing it, you're producing. So I think like my I think that my single best advice I could give to anyone is to just post. And the third reason is that you start learning about what does well. You look at the data, you start experimenting, you get playful with different types of content, and then eventually you might find your thing, your format, the thing that just like, you might have like a style of post that just does really well for a bit, and then all of your posts just sort of lock onto that style. There are plenty of creators out there who are known for a certain style of content. My style, arguably, is me running with the camera, running along with my phone and just speaking to the camera. Very simple. Obviously, it's been done before many a times, but there's all sorts of details around how I make one of those that kind of make it my style. People know me for that. There's all sorts of creators out there who are known for their stitches. You've got like a guy called Joey Swole in the fitness space. He sort of basically calls out like fitness influencers or people creating videos in the gym a lot of the time, calls them out for being kind of like entitled and complaining about people getting into their frame and stuff like that. And he's got a huge following, but people know him for that. They know him for that style. You got to experiment. You got to ship. You got to put it out there, experiment, and maybe you'll find a style. But it all starts by actually pressing post.
And I would recommend to the person who's listening to do what I did in preparation for this very podcast, to go back, scroll all the way
don't do it.
to the bottom of Tommy Lewis's page and tell me you can't be somewhat inspired. And maybe I'm biased because I know you, but to see you go from, like I said earlier, couple thousand, lower again, up, big one, down again, that journey and just the consistency.
Yeah, I mean,
it's what it takes.
Yeah, it's what it takes, man. And some people would, I'm really grateful for the reception it's got. I feel like it's been a short period of time. It's only, a few years of doing it. I've obviously tried really hard to learn as much as I possibly can about the medium that is social media, but and I've got my theories that many would probably disagree with in terms of what does well and why it does well. But yeah, I think I've had a crazy growth, especially in the last year. I'm very grateful for that. But it is consistency, and like it might take 10 years.
Yeah.
It might take 20 years of whatever you're doing before you find that success. But man, you won't regret starting. Like if you get to 20 years time, you finally make it to where you want to be, or you finally find satisfaction in where you're at. It took 20 years, whatever. But like, well done for getting there and starting.
Just work on it.
Yeah.
Just work, man. Like with my journey to here, right now I'm loving this. I'm passionate about it. I care about it. It's something that I feel like you said earlier is like connecting with the right people as well. But it wasn't smooth for me. Really, really weird journey to get here. Set up a business in fucking property. I never saw myself doing that. You never know where things are going to turn out as long as you're kind of taking a step. You never know. You did not plan for this to be what it is. You were just doing it.
No, not at all. And it's funny because, I've been trying to produce, putting out like social media content and trying to, build leverage in the space that I want to work in. And it has always been an intention to work in the space, whatever that looks like. I don't know what it looks like, but whatever it looks like. And the whole idea was to just try and help people as much as possible so they would appreciate, what I'm producing, build leverage, and then you've got like a captivated audience, right? And the moment of like monetization that everyone talks about, it's not just like flicking a switch. Like if you suddenly get like a quote unquote big following, you can't just monetize that without risking ruining what you've built. And I've been really careful throughout my time, kind of as my audience has grown, as I've produced content. I've been really careful and made some mistakes along the way, but to only partner with brands and do it rarely where I really care about the brand, or like I feel like I can give an authentic kind of video or, whatever. There have been times where I've kind of partnered with a brand or started doing something early on that didn't go too well. You're smirking because you know the stories. But I've been really adamant to really only do that very rarely and only for products that I genuinely use, I pay for, I like. And I think like what I was really getting at there is that there's many different ways that I've thought about monetizing or like entering the space and actually making money in a like sort of legitimate and honest way. It could have been coaching, it could have been at one point I had an idea for like a hat business, might still happen.
Remember
I don't
that?
know, but like, trying to figure out a way to, utilize the leverage I've built, but not just like flog products to my audience and wash out all of the sort of brand identity. And I think there's a delicate way of doing it.
Yeah, you played it quite well, actually. Like, it was very... You didn't come out guns blazing. You're just like, hey, look. And you actually, the way you speak about brands on your stories or on a video is very, hey, look, they're good for these reasons, or I might not like this about them. And I'm like, okay, that's quite refreshing to just see somebody who's not saying, oh my God, check this out, like, buy this and make sure to use my code.
Yeah, well, Well, firstly, I actually do believe in what I'm saying when I sort of partner with a brand. I genuinely like their products.
For sure.
But also, secondly, like I have another pretty fundamental message as part of my kind of ethos that you don't need all this stuff. So you don't need like a crazy fancy watch. You don't need like all of this fancy stuff. It's a simple sport, and you shouldn't be kind of too sold into. So I don't want to contribute too much to trying to promote stuff that you need, and this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. But for those who are in the market for spending some money on their health and a hobby that they, absolutely love, then, I want to point them in the right direction to brands I actually really love. And every runner loves a bit of gear. Like the right kind of gear. Not every runner loves that kind of gear.
Yeah.
But everyone loves, all of the sort of different brands and all that. They get really into that, and so do I. So yeah, I think like I want to definitely make sure that it's clear that I actually love the brands that I'm associating myself with, and also promoting through my brand. But I'm in the business of content. I'm in the business of reach, and that's what the brands care about. But there's also a real kind of authentic connection you can have with brands that I really want to make sure I tap into.
I think you do a great job of it, honestly. The financial segue, like that's the big. The more and more I speak to people about, hey, why don't you want to try, or what's kind of stopping you? It's always like 95% of the time is, don't know how I'm going to be doing for money along the side when I do that. Am I going to be short? It's that kind of fear of unknown muddled in with like financial segue and how do I manage this, and it just causes this paralysis that, like, I think we said this before we came on, it's like the lack of any sort of action is what ensues from there. Just stagnation, nothing. Ideas being just kind of swept aside, and it's kind of it's the killer of all dreams in this world.
It's the killer of all economies as well, uncertainty. I think like at any time you're uncertain, it can cause, like you say, inaction, and really you're not doing anything, then time passes and you all of a sudden everything's uncontrollable. You don't have the money. I would say, if I were to give anyone like any advice on when to step away, like if money is an issue, you can make it work. Like, you can be back against the wall and make it work. That's happened to you. It's happened to people you've had on this podcast. You can be back against the wall and make it work. I've been back against the wall and made it work in a way that I didn't want to make it work. Like I had to jump back into work, back into 9 to 5.
Great example.
At the end of the day, to some capacity, you will be fine, or you can figure out how to be fine if you back yourself. And I was ultimately fine. Here I am today. But it wasn't a time that I would recommend. It wasn't an experience I'd recommend to anyone. I learned a lot through it, but I, really was scraping the barrel there for a long time. And I would say that most importantly, when you don't have money, or when the money is like a real anxiety and worry for you, when you're stepping away and trying to do something full time, it can really sort of impact your emotional state and the state of mind from which you approach your work. And then you are going to be, I believe, less optimistic, less productive. You're going to be operating with fear rather than, love and passion and excitement. And I feel like that's not a good place to be. I think at the very least, you have to have a very clear vision of how that money is going to come in, on top of having a bit of a runway. And I'm fortunate enough now to have a bit of a runway and have a very clear idea and some money that's already come in, but also a clear idea of how more money is going to come in, how I'm going to grow that. And, you know, I really feel lucky because I'm approaching it without too much fear.
Gently.
Yeah, my boss, well, one of my bosses yesterday sort of came, and instead of saying, "Oh, I heard the news, commiserations," or "No, I heard the news, oh, it's sad to see you go," or whatever, which she did say. Her first word was "congratulations."
Wow.
Which was just like a really powerful thing. You know, you're working amongst the right people, and they really care about you in that sense. Like, she knew what I was doing. She said congratulations, and you know, I think ultimately and she said, like, "Are you scared?" And I said, "No, like, I'm actually not. I'm not scared." And when I did it before, and I tried it before, I was pretty scared, didn't know what I was doing, clueless. I was taking action, I was trying to make it work, but you know, it didn't really sort of pan out the way I thought it would. This time I'm going in without as much fear. I've got like this anticipation and a bit of excitement and a bit of like, oh, you know, got to take this seriously. I'm just sort of leaving now, but I'm not as fearful of what's to come, because I think mostly because of the support that I'm receiving, which is a hugely powerful thing if you can get that. But also financially, I'm not like up against the wall, so that matters, I think.
What I was thinking as you said that was the fact that they said congratulations highlights that if given the chance to do something that lights them up, that they could segue financially, they would do it in a heartbeat. Otherwise, you wouldn't say congratulations, which is sad.
Yeah,
that a lot of people in that position won't, let's face it, a lot of them won't get to do that. Most of them won't, probably. There may be a select few who do and try and do what you've just outlined, have a similar journey or somewhat different, but most won't.
Most definitely won't. Yeah. I think like there's a mix of, you know, some people are probably like, congratulations, because they see, I can see you're so much more passionate about that than you are about this. But there's obviously the other side of it, which is very true, that is, there's a bit of envy, you know, there's a bit of sort of jealousy of people that are able to kind of turn their passion into a profession. Yeah, everyone sort of wants to do that. And I think just a lot of people don't even do the groundwork of finding what they're passionate about before they even start producing or providing value in that space, or figuring out how they can provide value in that space. They don't even think about what they're really truly passionate about outside of their career. I know a lot of people who go through school, go through university, specifically training and educating for a specific career, and then they go into that career, and then, you know, the classic is probably, you know, a legal career. No offense to lawyers, but a lot of you do hate it. And a lot of them sort of find themselves in this role, and they're like, I don't really like it. You know, my brother's a lawyer. I think he loves it. So there are plenty of people who do very well. Yeah, power to you. I think there's plenty of people who do very well in their career, and but I swear I hear so many stories of creative people who end up in the sort of
tech.
Or they end up just somewhere they're not supposed to be, and then they sort of just go, do you know what? I'm doing well at this. It, you know, provides well. All this. But they do sort of look back. I wish I did just, you know, spend a bit more time kind of on that, or I wish I did just pursue that a little bit more. What if that could, you know, what if? And that's the scariest. It's the scariest.
But we know, man. We all know this. We know it. And what's sad is, like, if you compare those two up against each other, right? Like 30, 40 years of staying there versus the 2 to 3 to 4, maybe 5 or whatever, to get away and to actually do what you are now doing, which is what you love, and helping people. What? Like, of course you're going to pick that one. But so many people will pick the former, the long, slow, dreary path to residual regret, or maybe really confronting regret.
Yeah. I think the scariest, but also most captivating question to ask, depending on when you're asking it, is what if? Like, you could ask yourself now, what if I went and did that thing? And you got the opportunity to go and do that thing, and then you go and do it. Or you could not do it and ask yourself in 20 years' time, what if I just did that? You know, what if I had put more time into that? What if I had really worked hard at producing within that space? And then you've got the fear of regret, which I mean, so many people surely would resonate with that. Like there's so much, I'm fearful of regretting the next 30 years of my life. I don't want to ask the question, what if, about something that never happened?
That's a big driver for me. And when you were saying about the people in the office who I actually know, it's the people who are managers, the people who are maybe in senior management. Like they're almost like so far away. Whereas I see people who are maybe like you and I, like late 20s, early 30s, kind of in there. There's kind of more of a chance there, but it's even still hard at that point.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest problems, and one thing I feel very fortunate about is my impatience.
Fucking hell, snap.
Because I just can't stand I can't stand the idea of doing something I don't like. I don't like doing every single day. Like I'm really just I can't do it.
Bothers me.
Yeah, like I can't. I just can't sit here and sell software all my life. Whereas some people, they don't get to a point where they're frustrated enough. They're not really like frustrated. It's okay. It's I don't really mind it. I kind of like sales. I kind of like chatting about this and that. And,
that's the thing. You do it.
Fine.
It's good.
And I think I think there's employees, people who are in employment, if they're happy, then they're a necessary part of all of this. Like you talk about, you can't promote starting businesses and employing people and also in the same breath promote getting out of any 9-to-5 just because it's a 9-to-5, or getting out of a job just because it's a job. If you love what you do, then that's right. If you're very good and very passionate about what you do, mate, you've done it. You've done it.
Well done.
Well done. But the fact is, there are a lot of people who don't like what they do and aren't that good at it, or maybe okay at it because there's some soft skills and they've been doing it for a while, but it's not their thing, and they feel uncomfortable and they struggle to admit to themselves that they could, feel
they're
uncomfortable, and they're afraid of what comes. Yeah, exactly. And the truth is, they don't want to sort of face up to the fact that the last decade has been spent doing something they don't want to do. But they should also feel empowered by the fact that what they've been doing for the last decade, or whatever they've been doing that they don't like, has tremendous amount of value in their life in terms of business skills or whatever other kind of skills and experience. I can't emphasize enough how much B2B sales has helped me in how I understand business and how I understand a sale, partnerships. I can't emphasize enough how my early stage business experience has helped me understand how to build businesses and go to market strategy and all of the stuff that is around business strategy, and actually, what it means to build a business model that makes sense. All of that stuff I sure could have maybe learned as an entrepreneur or whatever, messy, but I've happened to learn it in a way that's very structured, and for the most part structured, in the last 8 years. And I'm super grateful for all the connections, all the people, all of the learnings that I've learned, all of the corporate jargon. I'm super grateful for everything I've learned. And I think people need to recognize that, you don't necessarily have to look back on the last 2 decades and say, oh, what a waste. You can look back and say, right, I've got that, but I'm going to be honest with myself now. I'm about a lot more, and I need to get out of this.
I agree. You got it. It's understandable why most people get into it. You're 18, you're 21, you kind of roll into it, and you're like, all right, well, boom, fast forward. It's now I'm 28.
Yeah,
it's understandable, but it does stand to you. And I've been, Jesus, like without the business to business skills, I would not have accelerated my own business as nearly as much as I did. And I think another key thing as well is like I would not have stayed doing that if I wasn't working with the people I was working with. Fucking love the people. Like, this is honestly, I think of a lot of them when I am whilst on this kind of mission that I'm on, is like I actually think of individual people that I used to work with, bosses, like managers, people who are CEOs, and I just think, fuck, I'd love for this to reach them. What I'm trying to do here, to reach those individual people that I know maybe not quite as burningly as I had it, but do feel what we're talking about. I would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they do, man. Like, I won't name names, but someone very recently said to me that they were pretty jealous of when I was handing them a notice. Went for a walk with them. Mm-hmm. It was someone that I needed to tell in the business. And he was like, you know, if they weren't paying me, you know, I wouldn't be doing it. And that's the reality. And you've asked this question even on this podcast before. If they weren't paying you, would you do it? No, of course I wouldn't do it. The only reason I'm doing it is because I'm getting paid. Well, I would do this if I wasn't getting paid. And I want to and I want to do it full time. You need to get paid in order to do something full time.
Me too.
So I'm going to figure out how to get paid through it.
Yeah.
But I would do this, you know? And I think when you find something that really is more, it's so much more than the money you can make from it. I mean, there's the magic, I think.
I'm the same with this.
Yeah.
I want this to be the thing I do all the time. I love it.
Yeah.
And going back to like time, I think there's a quote, right? It's this thing is just like burning in my mind, man. You've probably heard it as well, but we have 2 lives and the second begins when we realize we only have one.
Yeah. I've heard that one. It's good. Yeah. And I do, I mean, who knows, man? There might be another life, but I'm not sure anyone can be convinced of that. I'm not sure anyone can be convinced that there is. I mean, people can be convinced of it, but I personally don't know. So I'm going to go with what I do know, and that is I'm here now in this life and feel like I got one shot. And I think that's liberating, knowing that this could be the last time. You know, knowing that everything you do could be the last time you do it. That's a liberating thing. It's a empowering thing. And I think that's sometimes an important perspective. What's interesting about that actually is that obviously I quit my job this week, handed them a notice this week. Knew I was going to do it before I did it, obviously. It wasn't an accident. But when you do it, then all of a sudden, and I have had these thoughts recently as well, like, oh, this will be over soon, I appreciate this. But I've had this overwhelming feeling of gratitude for the company I've been working for the last 2 years. You know, even just like looking around at the people I've been working with, like real, genuine legends at that place.
For sure.
And I have felt a bit like melancholic a little bit, sort of like, man, I've in some ways, sometimes felt a bit flat. Because it's almost like, oh man, I wish I did love this. You know, in some way, it's like, if I really loved this stuff, man, what an existence. Get to come into work and do what you love and get, you know, all the benefits you get. It's insane. But
that's a great point.
I don't love it, you know, and every day I really dread fundamental parts of what it means to have this role and do this role well. I dread it. I hate it. And it's a bit sad, but the reality is, thanks for everything, but you know, all good things come to an end, and it's come to an end. But it has allowed me to have that feeling of like, you know, it's over now. It's like, this will be the last time. This will be the last time I leave this office, and you feel like very grateful for it. You know, yeah.
The people I felt that as well when I left, and I remember like. Well, I mean, I've left a few jobs in my time. You know, you have to leave a job at every point you leave it for whatever reason. But every time I'd always look back and be like, all right, you know, hope you guys are doing well.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I don't, it's just the work.
Well, that was it. Yeah. I love hanging out with them.
Yeah. I just didn't, I couldn't imagine a world where I was 60 or 70 and I just didn't change anything about this, and I kind of just kept doing it. Because for me, even at 23, I had my first sales job at 23. I knew even then, when I was kind of allured by these big, well, I mean, relatively big paychecks at the time, even then I knew this isn't right. I'm not where I should be. I knew.
Yeah.
I knew then. Yeah.
I think you should tune into how you feel. If someone feels like they're not in the right place, they're just like, this just isn't me. Like someone who I don't know, really is passionate. Excuse me. Someone who's like really passionate about the outdoors, or like whatever, or fitness or something. They're just sort of stuck behind a desk. Some people make that work. They have great careers behind a desk, earn a load of money, and also like adventure in their own time. But some people just feel uncomfortable in the situation that they're in, even conceptually. Sometimes I feel myself sort of sat there at the desk, just like, what are we doing? What are we doing? We're all just tapping away, getting stressed, clicking, tapping, getting stressed about what someone else has said to you. They don't even know what you look like. Someone on the other side of an email doesn't know what you look like from procurement, and they're just like having a go, and you're like, whoa. And you get all stressed. And I'm sometimes like, what are we doing? Getting so stressed about this, like none of it matters. That's a bit of a side note, but I can find it difficult to like bring my full non-sarcastic self to work when I'm just like, are you kidding me?
And you're at a meeting and there's just some guy in the US just talking about synergy on some Zoom call with 1,000 other people, and you're like, what?
Dude, sometimes when I hear like corporate jargon, it'll be put in like a PowerPoint slide, and I think it's a parody. I think it's like
someone's taking the piss out of me here.
Like, you're taking the piss.
Somebody's
and I look around the room and everyone's like, nodding.
Yes,
and I'm just like,
agreed.
You're joking. They're talking about like,
where's the hidden camera?
Synergizing inconsistencies in the culture. I don't know what else, but like,
I know.
Sometimes I just think we're all having a laugh here.
Surely most people in there are thinking the same thing.
I don't know if people, because I think there was one recently, right? I can't remember what, I sent you a voice note about it. I came out of it, I needed some air from the
Oh yeah, I do remember.
I needed some air from the corporate bullshit. And it was like just one presentation. And she was kind of new, and she was saying what her role was about and what her plans are, and ex-consultant. So you know what I mean? She's great at like a bullshitty slide deck.
Gets paid a few bob.
Yeah, I used to get paid some serious whack for consulting and putting slide decks together. Anyway, there's my cynical self coming out. But the first line was just like, it was like a parody of, it was just how much corporate jargon can I put in this? And I was just like, you're having a laugh. And I turned to like the person next to me, and I was like, are you joking? And he sort of was like, oh yeah. I was like, I don't think anyone really gets like as sort of riled up about just, I want to take him by the shoulders and be like, crack out of it.
Dude.
Snap out of it. Be yourself. Like, you don't have to say those words. It doesn't mean, what do you mean?
What are you saying?
What are you on about? I was like, recently on like a call, someone was doing a report on like a great, sale that they did out in the States, and they're talking about it, and we brought in some external collaborators and cross-functional collaborators. And I was like, shut up.
The economic buyer in this one was a real stickler.
What are you talking about? And you're like, even just like saying external collaborators and cross-functional.
I know.
What are you talking about? Who is that? And sometimes I'm just like
it is all bullshit.
Like,
we know
talk to me like I'm in the pub, and you're talk to me about how you closed the deal. Who'd you bring in? Like legitimately, who'd you bring in? Oh, it's because I went for a beer with him, and he was nice, and it turns out he actually had some leverage. Cool. I don't know. I just get a bit like,
I know, because we all know as well. We're all kind of just playing. Like, what is this?
I know,
this is
yeah. We all play along.
We're spending so much time in here doing this, and we all kind of know it's bollocks. We're all just, I don't know, man. But I think your journey, anyway, just to kind of go back to this and stop slagging the corporate world, I think your journey shows, like, literally, you can go and look at your journey. Just go and scroll back. I said it earlier. Go back and scroll on Tommy's videos. I'll probably do it again because I was genuinely inspired. Because I feel like I'm at the bottom of that rung, let's say, metaphorically. And I was like, yes, this is doable. Here's a guy who's shown me in real time that he's found his thing that lights him up, that matters to the world, that he would do for free, that he wants to keep doing, that he can get paid for. And that is a net positive to the world. What a beautiful thing. And you found it. And imagine, remember earlier we were saying 90% of the world, or 90% of the UK is disengaged at their job. Imagine that was flipped on its head. And everyone was living a life of purpose and impact in the way that you are, having the impact you are. Imagine everyone got to do that.
Mad.
Hey there, jumping in really quickly. Tommy and I have about 7 or 8 minutes or so left in the interview. If you've made it this far, that probably means it's been somewhat of an interesting interview, or perhaps you've maybe left your phone playing and you've forgotten about us. But either way, it's great that you've made it this far. What I would like you to walk away from this with is the belief that you can truly lean into something that you care about right now, today. Start taking steps. And you've seen now what's happened with Tommy. You've seen how much he's grown over the past few years doing this and what it's meant for him, how different his life is. And I would love for you to start taking one step, just one step that you can take today to do that. Besides that, I really appreciate you sticking around till the end. If you would like to support the show, you can do so by subscribing. You can do so by rating. If you are listening on Spotify, that really does help give the show a little push, and hopefully we can reach more people. So this message of leaning into work that matters to you can reach more people. But that's enough of me. I'm going to send you back into the last few minutes of the interview here with Tommy, where we have a couple of more funny interactions and close things off really nicely. Thank you very much for checking out this episode, and I hope to see you at the next one.
Wouldn't the world be a better place if we all managed to find, or if a lot more of us managed to find that? I feel like it would have. I feel like it would have such a positive effect on the world. Like, I don't know. I don't want to make big claims, but I just think there's so much resentment built up by doing what you hate doing for 50 hours of a week. I feel like there's so much damage that can be done in your own life if you ultimately hate what you do and you really don't know why you're doing it. Like, all sorts can happen. It's important. It is important to try and find your thing, the thing that lights you up, the thing you want to talk about, the thing that energizes you. Like, it is important to find those things. And
do you know what?
It's good stuff, man.
Even if you don't post about it, or even if you don't make money off it.
Exactly. Just do
it.
Do it. Not everyone wants to make their passion a profession. It's actually risky. There's real risk in making your passion a profession. If you turn it into the money-making thing, there is real genuine risk of ruining what it was. And everyone needs to be cognizant of that. You know, if you love it for genuinely what it is, you need to retain what you love about it when you make it a profession. Because, like, who knows, in a few months' time, when all I'm doing is trying to, make this business work and it's all about running, and then I just don't allow myself any time to actually enjoy my own running, that's going to be a really damaging thing. So it's really important to be cognizant of the fact that turning your passion into a profession could ruin the passion. So it's not necessarily for everyone. You don't have to find, that one thing. But I do think it's important to love what you do. And whether that's finding a way to enjoy what you're currently doing, whether it's finding out what you're passionate about and going into that, you might be passionate about something that is within your career. Like, you might be passionate about the role you have. You could be a product designer and you just love that role. I'm using that specifically because at one time I thought I wanted to be, I actually thought I'd wanted to be a product manager. So that'd be really interesting. There are people out there who, you could be a product manager and you're like, this is what I love doing, and you love the product and you love seeing the project through. That's great. But I think, the world, 100% the world would be a better place if more people loved what they did. I mean, yeah, sure.
Staying on that person who is the product designer. Maybe probably a lot of people who are listening to this just for you, they follow you and they probably love what they do. And not everyone is compelled with the pits of their soul to leave the corporate world, right? To those people, like, that's I envy them in a way. Like, that's like I prefer if I kind of actually just enjoyed doing what I was doing. I didn't, right? We've talked about that. But a lot of people who have tuned in to listen to you will want to change. And I think that's a key difference. I was talking to Izzy about this last night. I was like, with this endeavor I'm on, this pursuit, this content that I make, I want it to reach the person who wants to change. You know, a lot of people probably don't like their job, but I want to reach the people who don't like their job and who want to do something about it, you know, who want to change. And I want to focus on them for a sec. Like, what would you say to that person who does want to change?
That feeling of desperation that you have right now, being lost, not knowing what the next move is, not knowing what your passion is, not knowing where to go, that feeling is necessary. Like, hook onto that feeling of discomfort, of frustration, of feeling lost, and take action on it. Because if you take action, if you start doing more, if you start being curious, if you start like investigating, you know, go to webinars, go to environments you've never been in, like meet people, message people on LinkedIn, go and find out more about, you know, what's out there and what you could be interested in. Be curious. Use that desperation to start doing crazy things. Start producing content, whether it's, you know, a newsletter or whether it's a blog or it's, you know, content without your face on social media or like it's a group on Facebook, whatever it is. Start producing within a space. Start finding your thing. And you just got to like really use that sort of desperation to take action. I think like if you are feeling desperate, use that and just sort of be grateful for the fact that at least you're tuned into the fact that you're uncomfortable with where you're at, because a lot of people just coast with something they're not happy with and then complain 30 years down the line that they never found what they were into. Use what
you've got the fucking fire that's
burning.
Yeah,
you got it, man. You've got this sweet. You're lost.
Step one.
You're lost. You have no idea what you're doing. Sweet. Everything is possible now. You know, because everything is confused. You know, you're desperate for something. Go investigate. Go find the thing. Be curious. Like when you start actually looking, you realize how many options are out there. Like you can do literally anything you want to do. It can be in any space, and there are thousands and thousands of industries out there. You just don't know what you want. You know, you just don't know what it's going to end up being. It's just, you know, start producing, stop planning, stop worrying too much about where you're going to end up, and start just like finding passion for things now. It's a hard place to be, but it's a necessary place to be.
That's a beautiful way to put it, by the way. Like you've got that, like that insatiable kind of feeling that, or like you just know something's wrong, something's not where it should be, and it's a blessing because that means you can do something about it. You know, which is amazing.
Yeah.
You and as well, right? I'm going to stay on that for a sec. If you're ever lacking in inspiration along the way, go back and look at Tommy's page. I swear to God, last night when I was looking at that, you know, because I'm somewhere along that way, I'm like, fuck yes. Like the guy did it. He stuck at the thing. He's doing his thing. He's doing the thing that he loves. It's amazing. Want to ask though, right? What is sort of an consistent or recurring mental battle that you've had to wrestle with?
A recurring mental battle?
Yeah, or like blocker that you've had to face along the way, if any.
Like since posting? Or?
Yeah. Because social media fucks a lot of people up, right? It's like, it can be a bit daunting to do, and some people might not know what they're getting themselves in for. What have you struggled with?
I mean, I've always naturally struggled with like the judgment of others. At the end of the day, like, you're putting yourself out there, you're judging and scrutinizing your own work, and then you put it out there for others to do so. But I think the main thing that I've had this like sort of mental battle with is making sure that I am myself on there. I've even told you about this, like sometimes when I'm like, if I'm like running with the camera or whatever, and then I'll say a certain line with a tonality that just doesn't sound like me, and then I'll just redo it, and then I'm just, no, it's not me, and then I'll redo it until it sounds actually like I am talking to you in the pub or whatever. So like one thing that I guess I battled with is just making sure that I am actually my full, like my real self, and not like it's some persona. Because I just hate the idea that I would be different, you know, on the platform than if someone were to meet me. But I haven't battled heaps. I mean, you know, you get the odd, I get the odd like hateful comment and whatever, but I just laugh about it actually. I'm now genuinely at a point where I just laugh about that, but yeah.
Well, I think it's like, I mean, look, I know your story. I've kind of been here with you for a lot of this kind of like jump you've had and stuff, but I just love highlighting it and getting into it with you, because you've come, you know, you've quit the job prematurely, you've fucked it up, you know, you've felt hopeless, you've tried, you've failed, you've came back to sales, and then you've actually done it. You've found this thing and you are literally in the process. You have just left and you're on the cusp of this like whole new, like you just don't know what's ahead of you now. And that's actually, that is the last question I want to ask you right now is, what does this future look like for you now?
Who knows, man? No. Well,
what do you think Tommy Lewis in 2026 looks like? October, 24 months from now, what's happening?
Well, you know, yeah, the truth is it is just the start. Although, you know, we've spoken about the whole process to get here. It's just the start, which is a beautiful thing.
Because remember, right, we were in a bar earlier this year and you had like, I think you had 10,000 followers, maybe 20 at the time.
Probably,
and I think
probably January, like about 20, maybe 10 to 20.
Something like that. Yeah. And I was like, you know, I was like I said, I believed in you. And I've said that. I was like, Tommy, I really back what you're doing. I fucking back it. I was like, 100K by the end of the year. And you were like, you're like, no way.
I was like, stop being an idiot.
I was like, I know you're going to do it. And then you fucking...
I actually got defensive, I think. I was like, dude, you don't get it. Shut up.
And then you hit it in like June.
Yeah, mad.
Like, so imagine that level of just unexpectedness in 2 years.
Yeah, well, very practically, like, I'm sort of in the launching phase of That's Runnable. So it's, in terms of its business model, it's sort of a media company in some ways. What comes under That's Runnable is a newsletter, which has been going for 18 weeks now, a podcast, which has just been released. And then we've got like merchandise that will come out of that, events that will come from that. These events specifically will be formatted so that they're inclusive. So more to come on that, but we're looking at sort of events that you can approach in your own way. And then, you know, all sorts of anything else that would come under that, like info products, digital products online, like plans and guides and that sort of stuff. But That's Runnable. I want it to feel really very much like a community. It's a bit of an extension of my own ethos, and it's a way to kind of try and help people feel like they're a part of it. You know, they're a part of this kind of, you know, run the runnable vibe. And so wherever that goes, I don't know, but 2026, I'm hoping we'll have a few events under our belt and a bigger community that's bigger than me.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Tommy, can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this.
I know.
This is sick. Appreciate you coming on, brother. I love you to bits.
Nice one. Appreciate it.
Let's get out of here. Fuck yeah, now that was good.